It has definitely been a bit, and the bike's gonna look a little different. Here it is.
Back at the club, coked up on so many drugs. You act like you know me, well girl, you don't know me. The codeine, it hurt me so much. Bad girl at the back of the club, coked up on so many drugs. You act like you know me, well girl, you don't know me. The codeine, it hurt me so much.
Every time you turn your back, yeah, you're good at that. I'm just so fucked up. Cigarette in your mouth, no love, double cup. Yeah, when you dance, don't cut on the lights. Baby, let's ride in the night. All of those pictures I saw of you before I saw you, you looking so nice. Looking so nice. Yeah.
Cigarette in your mouth, picture so perfect, yeah, you standing out. Cup full of ice, let my liver bleed, purple so nice. Living like a dream, bad girl, yeah, you know so much. Mind is stressed by the drugs, mind possessed by the love. Fucked up, wrist cut, I'm a bum. Got all these different pillies, they dissolving on my tongue.
Like you, I know all these drugs gon' fuck me up, but I still get high off you. Fuck it, I don't wanna stop.
Bad girl at the back of the club, coked up on so many drugs. You act like you know me, well girl, you don't know me.
So here we are. A lot of the hard parts on the bike are complete and on it. Everything's torqued down. I did attempt to film a lot of the process to get here. However, a lot of this work is very boring, and I'm so meticulous about how I put things together. Like putting a heat gun on the wiring and getting all the bends right. Just the coolant pipes alone took me like 6 hours to get all the tension clamps on in the right orientation, make sure that the spring steel wasn't hitting any aluminum and gonna abrade it with the vibrations that this bike makes over time. So with that said, I did film some of it. However, I see a lot of that film that I got is kind of useless because it's not congruent, doesn't make sense, and it's a process of me kind of figuring out everything on the way. So I did want to share it though. So I guess what I'm going to do is probably just take a walk through of the bike today, talk about why I did things, how I did things, and some of the decisions that led me to make some of the changes that I did. So probably the best way to start this out is to give you guys a look at the bin of parts, and we are pretty much down to a kickstand and a few components left here. The fuel, a bunch of left, the body stuff, some brake stuff, and that's about it. So all the bolts are pretty much back on the bike. I guess what we'll do is we'll start at the front and pretty much move backwards. So the forks, they were fully serviced, replacing the fork oil and the damper oil. And then I also replaced all the bushings with those Pro X set. I did have an issue going together on the forks. I was kind of surprised at the lack of damping that the compression side gave, and it did it on both. So I'm not really sure what to make of it. I talked to Ryan Co. About, because I thought it was an issue of concern, and he kind of reassured me that it's not. He had said that the way that the front suspension works is it really needs a fast impact to have that damping effect work. And as I finished the rebuild on him, I was stroking him in the garage, and I really couldn't tell much of a difference between hard and soft. So made the decision, what we're going to do is just continue with the build, and if it becomes an issue when I get it on the road, I'll address it then. But until then, we're just going to run them because they don't leak oil anymore. Fresh bushings, all the seals are brand new in there, and good to go. For the radiators, so I actually had brand new radiators on standby from when I raced this bike, because I used to crash it once in a while, and you'd taco a radiator or leak, it'd get all messed up. Fairings wouldn't bolt on right. So lucky I had those on in the parts area that I keep, and we're able to put brand new radiators on this thing. So next we'll talk about the thermostat, and the install in this thing was awesome. It's very small, very compact. I had an idea of using another one made by C&R that I found on Summit. However, when it actually shipped here, the thing was huge. It took up like this much room in here. So this unit I got from Thermobob, and it's very compact, made for a really clean install. I love these constant tension spring clamps that I got. And again, I think they're made by Norco, but I sourced them from worth.com, and that's W-U-R-T-H. They were super quick on the shipping, and they have like every single size. You can go like 16 mil, 18 mil, 20 mil, any millimeter you want. So for instance, you know, I ended up using 27 mils on these. These big ones down here, these are 30 mil, and I think they use 27s there also. But the recirc pipe location is actually down in here, and it recircs right back to the suction of the pump. So when this thing is starting up or heating up, here's the water pump down here. It's gonna pump water up through the thermostat. It's actually gonna escape through the bypass, and then it's hard to see, but that bypass is actually plumbed through an elbow right here, and that will be able to return back to the suction of the water pump. I had a couple options for where to put that T for the recirc bypass, and at first I was actually going to put it in here, in between the front of the barrel and the frame, but it was rubbing. You can see some rub marks in there actually on the front of that cylinder. It was actually rubbing it really more than I was comfortable with, and considering these are very hard spring steel tension clamps, they were just going to chew through that aluminum over the life of this motor as it vibrates down the road. So I did decide to go with a Trail Tech fan kit, and one thing I really like about this is it actually gets power right off of the factory diagnostic port. So the port that you plug in for, if you were a Honda Tech, to get DTC codes off the ignition, it actually gets 12 volts right off of that and powers the fan directly off of that, which I liked. Here's the temperature sensor. I got it jammed into a fin with some thermal compound, and I'm just gonna. At first, I wasn't gonna put a fan on it, but after thinking about it, because of that thermostat, I'm gonna be riding around with the engine already at 180 degrees, and then if I pull up to a stoplight, I imagine the temperature is going to go up pretty quick. So I wanted to have a fan hooked up, ready to go, to be able to at least come on whenever I'm at a stoplight if the temperature is already at 180. And Trail Tech makes it really easy with this little programmable unit, so you can program whatever temperature you want the fan to come on at. But I was pretty impressed with the install. Super clean. Looks like a great little kit, so hopefully that works out well. For the wiring harness, it was nice having a brand new wiring harness. However, all these bends I had to make with a heat gun, so nothing. I didn't, you know, of course you don't want your wires chafing on anything, so everything all down in here had to really tuck away and get all these bends right with the heat gun to make them pliable and move them around. So the battery, this is where the battery is going to go. It is not full of it. There's no charge on it yet, so it doesn't have any acid in it, and I'm going to wait until I figure out the DOT harness before I actually charge that up, and because I'm not sure. I'm guessing the DOT harness is probably going to zip tie somewhere down along here and meet up in here and get up to there somehow, but I'm not sure yet. So the battery is just in place for now to just to get all the wire bent. So this, again, I had to use the heat gun on to get that wire bend right. And so here's the exhaust. I got the cans on, and of course they look great because it's a Yoshimura product. However, those are those plugs that I was talking about. You know, inside of here, you're never going to see it, but it's all full of dirt and muck, which it kind of bugs me. But anyway, these plugs cover it, and that was my issue getting those back from Yoshimura. How I wasn't really impressed that they didn't clean them out, but you know, they do make a beautiful product, and these mufflers do sound great, so I'm pretty happy with it. I've yet to kind of figure out where I'm going to put this. Not really sure how I'm going to route that yet, and because most importantly, we've got to keep it away from the exhaust. For road safety, so you can see everything. A lot of this stuff is getting lock wired. I always lock wire my sprockets, and then I was putting the shifter on actually today, And I had this thought that if I'm going to be taking this thing to Connecticut or any long type of ride, I have to lock wire this stuff in there, because you know the opportunity for that to back out and fall onto the street and become irrecoverable is pretty high. So that's get lock wired. Of course, the oil, all the oil will get lock wired after the first oil change, after it breaks in. So that's why those don't have lock wire on them yet. One thing I didn't say, and also on the radiators, so Twin Air makes these pretty nice. They're actually like a mud filter. However, using on the street, doing 70 miles an hour all the time, you end up smashing a lot of bugs into these radiators. So I had them laying around from the days that I raced this bike, and I'm going to use them on the Motard and cover up the radiators to keep those as fresh as I can, because like I said, both sides are brand new radiators. So I don't have this one on yet because I've still yet to determine how the DOT wiring harness is going to go. So this is the stock 450L turn signal switch, and Honda just really making nice stuff. I wanted to try to keep it looking as stock as I could. So I've yet to pin this out. There's actually 10 wires coming out of this. So I'm not sure how they use 10 wires for something like that, but I'm gonna figure that out, cut this apart and pin that out eventually. But kind of left this all how it is because, like I said, that DOT wiring harness is gonna grab power from the battery. I'm probably gonna route it along this subframe channel, probably inside here, up in here, and then probably along this wiring harness right through the head area, up the front, and then connect to the headlight that's gonna be here. Of course, I'm gonna have to put a front brake pressure switch on that, and then also talk to here. Blinkers. Blinkers are actually coming today in the mail, but they're gonna be a blinker, attached to the front triple, and the tail light that I actually purchased for this a while ago has integrated blinkers in the stoplight, so it's going to be very, very low profile and pretty sick. It's pretty cool seeing this thing without a kickstand on it. Really looking forward to that. Of course, here's the start switch. Cannot wait to get this thing fired up for the first time. The throttle tube. So this was actually left over. This is a used one I had from when I was racing. I would always go back and forth between aluminum tubes and the blue Motion Pro plastic one. Anytime I'd have a tip over or crash, of course the Motion Pro one would get bent up over here and I have to replace it. And also the aluminum ones, they don't really do too good for getting dirt up in here. So I was always kind of going back and forth between the two of them. But on my 08, on my Motard, I had really good luck with an aluminum tube and grease on the inside. So when they would, because I'm always riding it in the summer, so it would heat up to, 85-degree day, that grease inside here becomes really, the viscosity goes way down, and it's just you can see it's kind of slow to turn back now, but that's going to go away after we get it out for a couple rides and break it in, and once it sees like an 85-degree day. For the exhaust, I had intended to polish this, and I actually bought a buffing wheel. However, it was like a total failure. I think my buffer needs to be like a variable speed buffer, because I got the buffer going. I got the buffer going, and then put the polishing compound on it, and all it did was burn the buffing wheel. So maybe I was doing it wrong. Who knows? But what I did do was I just took some Scotch-Brite and Scotch-Brited the whole thing. Got all that varnish off from it previously getting hot. And I think what I'm going to do is before the very first time I fire this up, I think I'll go over the whole exhaust system with alcohol and get all the finger oils and junk off of it, so that the first time it sees heat, it can kind of turn that cool blue color and not have any contaminants on it. So one thing that you can probably see all over the bike is all these little paint marks. And like you saw me use those on the inside of the engine, I've also been able to use those on the outside of the engine. So on a project like this, day to day, I can't remember which bolts I've torqued and which ones I haven't. So it makes it very easy. If a bolt goes on for good and I torque it, it gets paint. So like for instance, the oil filter, there's no paint on those because those aren't finally torqued. Of course, remember me talking about the battery being temporary. So battery bolts, they don't have any torque paint on them. But everything that's on this bike for good is painted. And so here, the radiator bolt, that reminds me that since the DOT wiring harness is probably going to tuck behind here, these are going to have to come off to get that wire back behind there. So that's why they don't have torque paint on them, because I'm not done with that. It's just on temporarily. The steering stabilizer, so that install went pretty good. I had a GPR on my 08 and it worked really good. I never really got into any type of death wobble, or had a real reason to have it on, other than it made it nice to be able to dial it up or dial it down depending on how I was riding for the day. So based on some videos that I've seen in the past, I decided to just go ahead and get one, because God forbid I get into a situation where I needed one and I didn't have one, and just because I was being cheap, I didn't install it. So this thing will be nice. It'll ride just like my old bike, and at least we'll be able to prevent that situation of getting into a tank slapper and putting this thing in the ditch. So it's always cool to see a fresh bike build like this. I love seeing how everything is so clean, no dirt on nothing, very, the wires all organized. It also makes me feel really good to know that nothing on this bike was done half-ass. Couple of things I did do and they went together, and wasn't really happy with it, and then I was able to sleep on it for a night, and then came downstairs the next day and took it apart and redid it. Perfect example of why I'm so proud of that radiator hose assembly is because this is all the leftovers from version 1. So I actually did get a pretty good setup on there, and then like I was showing you before, how those tension clamps, I had them tucked away on the inside of between the barrel and the frame spar right here, basically in a very tight area in there. And the more I thought about it, I knew that the vibration of this motor and the frame with that hard steel between them, I knew that would not be good. So the next morning I woke up, I took the whole thing apart and used a spare hose kit that I had laying around, and definitely much happier with how it turned out now. So for today, I think what we're going to do is I actually have this fuel filter kit, and I think I might take you guys through the trip of installing that into the gas tank, because that's kind of a rare thing. That there's a couple of videos on YouTube of guys replacing their fuel filters, but since this thing will not be on the dirt anymore, I think what we're going to do is put a brand new fuel filter into it, and for sure know that there's no dirt, grit, or anything nasty inside that tank rattling around, waiting to keep us stranded 4 hours into a 5-hour ride somewhere. And going back to that whole thought I had about how just really pumped knowing that there's nothing half-assed done on this bike at all. Everything's exactly how I would want it to be, because nothing else is good enough. So for the fuel filter kit, the way that you get one is you got to go into the OEM parts finder on Motorsport or Rocky Mountain. So I haven't really found yet an aftermarket fuel filter supplier. However, you can order the kit in total from Honda off the OEM parts finder. And one thing that was really interesting was that the fuel filter actually came from backcountry, like the ski and snowboard people. I thought that was pretty strange. I ordered it off of Rocky Mountain, and then it said backcountry, and I ended up looking up the address, and it's actually backcountry, like the ski and snowboard supplier is where the fuel filter came from. So I thought that was pretty peculiar. But anyway, so we're gonna basically get the bottom of this thing off and get it apart on the inside and replace the fuel filter and make sure all the dirt is out of it and clean it back up, put it back together. So one of the first things we're going to do before we even take this thing apart is clock the retaining plate and the fuel sending unit and the tank, so that when they go back together, we don't have this oriented in a position that's not going to work with the factory wiring harness.
can't